Welcome to the Business with Beers podcast. This is the place where we help entrepreneurs expand their business, build their wealth, and generate passive income. I'm your host, Brian Beers, an entrepreneur who's on a mission to inspire growth from everyone around me. Remember that you need to take the actions others won't, and you can live the life that others don't. Please be sure to check out my weekly newsletter that now drops every Thursday. It includes one quote, one tweet, one podcast recommendation, plus some business and investing insight from me. It's short and it's sweet. My goal is to provide you with just a couple gold nuggets to help inspire your growth. Go to brianbeers.com to subscribe. Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to bring you Steve Hitzemann, a multi-unit StretchLab franchisee. After 20 years in corporate America, Steve transitioned to building a portfolio of StretchLab studios with his wife, Stacey, in the Carolinas. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
Awesome. So let's talk about your kind of journey. So you 20 years corporate America. What did you do? And then we'll kind of get into why did you pursue franchising?
Yeah, so my 20 years was good 20 years. Learned a ton. I got out of school in the late 90s, so I actually found my way into sort of the .com era, and working with a few .com type businesses early on. Transitioned into what I'd say formal corporate America, so one of the largest banks in the country. I was there for about the past 17 years and had multiple roles there. Given my technology background, I spent some time in technology, transitioned more sort of towards the front of the house. I was never a in front of client banker, but did a lot there with supporting the field. Ended up really spending the bulk of my time within the lending space across a portfolio of, call it 4,000 branches across the country.
Okay, so yeah, senior leadership position at a major bank, and so you've got this probably pretty secure, probably pretty well paying job, and you have this crazy idea that you're gonna quit your job and start your own business or become an entrepreneur. Walk me through what were you trying to achieve? What kind of what weren't you getting out of your job that you were looking for through entrepreneurship?
And when I started, it wasn't really, hey, I want to quit my job. My path into franchising, I think it was a little bit different than many in that I found my way to StretchLab through literally reading the paper one morning. And there was an article on the front page of the Journal talking about assisted stretching, this new modality within the boutique fitness space. And I thought, well, that's pretty darn interesting. I had actually been stretching on my own quite a bit due to kind of life and needing to do that after being with a chiropractor for a little bit in my early 40s. And so I read this article and I said, well, that sounds like a fantastic business that I'd like to be a customer of. I then transitioned that thought process pretty quickly to, well, hey, maybe this is something that I could do. So that got me really thinking about StretchLab. But really, originally it was assisted stretching, right? So I vetted, at that time, there were basically two businesses that were franchising. I also considered, hey, could I do this on my own? And realized pretty quickly, number one, that I couldn't quit my day job, right? I've got 3 kids, family, responsibilities, all that good stuff, a mortgage. So I was like, okay, this isn't an area that I have the expertise and experience in that I can go out and start this on my own. And that, to me, that's one of the beauties of franchising, right? That sort of the business model is there for you to go out there and execute. So, I vetted at that point the two options from a franchising perspective. It was a clear decision for me that StretchLab was the right fit, and then went down that path. Sort of my wife and I really kind of did that together, knowing, hey, let's give this a shot. I'm not going to quit my job, and so let's work this together. How can we make that happen? And so we, that was one of those things where we, new challenges every day. We worked through it to figure out how can I keep for 4 years a corporate job while at the same time building that portfolio. She was doing a lot for it. But given our situation, it was important, the people side of it, right? And go out there and find the right talent to run the business for us on a day in and day out basis.
Yep. Great. We got a lot of questions about that we're going to dive into, but just as an overview, you get a little brief, but so what is StretchLab for people that don't know? What is assisted stretching? Can you describe the experience?
Sure. So you come into a StretchLab. It is all one-on-one customized assisted stretching. Our goal is to help people with flexibility and mobility. So somebody comes in, I'll use myself as a good example. A guy in his late 40s, which is a very typical client of ours, and he says, "Hey, my lower back's tight. I sit at a desk all day. I want to play golf. I want to keep running, and I know I should stretch more, but I don't do it." So the StretchLab flexologist. So we've got everybody that works within our studio are highly trained. They come with degrees, and then we give them very specialized training. And we work with you one-on-one, either 25 or 50 minutes per session. And it's a customized stretch based on what your needs are. They know exactly what they're doing, how to stretch different parts of the body. It's all, the kinetic chain is all connected, right? So how do you progress somebody through a stretch in the right way? There's multiple types of stretching as well. So we're able to employ all those different modalities to give somebody that one-on-one customized stretch. It's all open air in the studio. It's not like if folks are familiar with a massage type of setup, right, where you're in a private room. We've got 10 benches in the studio, all lined up next to each other. There's music playing. It's not loud and raucous, but there's music going. My goal to my team is, hey, we want a professional, inviting, welcoming environment every time somebody walks through the door. And I want folks to feel that.
Yep. And generally they're in B to A class, higher income areas, strip centers, right?
Correct.
1,200, 1,500, whatever square feet, kind of in line. Strip center, at least the ones by me that I've seen.
Yeah, exactly right.
And and I've been to them, and it's pretty cool. They you walk in and they you do this body scan, and they can they have you do these different movements, and it kind of can identify what parts of your body they think maybe need some attention. And I had a recent kind of issue with a knee or whatever, and so mine, it was obvious I was favoring my one side over the other, so it was pretty accurate. And then what they walk us through too, and explaining it was it's the same kind of mindset and ideas that they're working with athletes, right? So athletes go and you see it all the time. They're on the sidelines, or they're in the studios getting stretched out, and so it may be new to us as consumers, but in the professional fields, they've been doing this for probably since the dawn of sports. And so
and that's interesting. They definitely have it, and that's our opportunity, right? So athletes that come into our studio are used to this, and they say, "This is great. I need to keep doing this." Maybe they're still athletes, or maybe they're working their way out. And they want to just stay healthy and limber. But the opportunity is bringing this to the masses, right? Because everybody can benefit from it, and that's what our job is, right? From a branding perspective, to making people aware of, okay, what is StretchLab and what is assisted stretching, and then helping people understand it is we say it's for everyone and everybody, regardless of your fitness ability, regardless of your body shape and size. We can help everyone. But yes, we treat everybody. We want to understand what your goals are. Okay, what are you in here to do? Right? It's going to have some type of athletic or physical component to that, obviously. Yep. So we have those conversations with clients the first time they're in, but then on an ongoing basis, because if we're doing our job, you're progressing within your sort of flexibility spectrum. And so we want to continue to assess, okay, what's your next goal, right? And how are we tracking towards this one? And then where are we going to go next? So that's a big part of
that's awesome.
The solution.
Yeah, I know my dad and uncle have been going for months or maybe 6 months or more. And, they do long. They're both in their late 60s or 70s. And, my dad hits a golf ball further. My uncle doesn't feel all stiff after getting out of a 2-hour drive to the shore or whatever it is. And sure. It's a kind of thing where there's definitely this education, gap that people have, because it's new, but I think once they get it, it's like a light switch, and it just clicks. So yeah, I can see what you saw in it with the business model, a handful of years ago. So
right.
So kind of walk us back. So you start with this one location, right? There's this whole that's kind of the dream, right? I work with a lot of guys, and they're in corporate America. They have good jobs, and they want to kind of start building something on the side, but it's really hard to find a franchise that you really can keep your job and then still build it up. And there's not many that really fit the bill. And I think, a lot of franchises are sold as this semi-absentee. It's just hire a manager, and everything just works out. And in reality, those are the ones that really struggle and hurt the brand. And it's just a bad situation for everyone. And so I guess, what are some of the aspects of StretchLab that you saw and you kind of believe that, hey, we can make this work, we can shift time or share the workload between you and your wife, and in part could be kind of the business model maybe is a little bit more flexible is the pun. But so anyway, what did that kind of feel like? Can you describe that to me?
Yeah, sure. So, we knew going in that, I don't have a background to be a flexologist. Now I've got business background. So we went into it with the initial, my wife, she's a nutritionist, but also not one that wanted to be stretching. So we had the mindset of, okay, we are going to have to hire a team to do this, right? And so I think and I've talked to a lot of folks, they think, okay, well, if something goes wrong here, then I can go in and I can do it and I can be the business, right? And so we never sort of tried to fool ourselves into thinking that was an option. So I think that helped us initially and say, okay, we're going to bring the right team in, look for the right experience. But yeah, StretchLab is part of the Exponential brand, and we are basically, everybody is playing off of the same playbook. And I say everybody, so all 10 brands within that Exponential portfolio, we're all executing generally the same sales playbook, right? We got a slightly different product, be it stretch or spin or yoga, Pilates, what have you. So seeing sort of what the Exponential process brought to the table, when I was vetting StretchLab, I didn't have any other StretchLab franchisees to speak to. So I worked with a broker who knew what was going on with Exponential and StretchLab, and he helped validate my thought process. But then I also spoke to a lot of Club Pilates owners at that time. That was it's the Club Pilates playbook that Exponential broadcast out across the other brands. And so speaking with those owners, operators, and asking them what's their daily life like, and then taking all those inputs, I spoke to roughly 20 owners, and then bouncing that off against what my goals were, what was reality for me in terms of a corporate day job, right, and maintaining that. And saying, okay, this is something that we can do, but people is paramount, right? We've got to go out there and find the right folks to run this on a day in, day out basis. Okay. But that said, I kept the day job, and I was working 80 hours a week, 80 hours plus for a while, right? It wasn't like it was just hire somebody and
it just runs itself. Like someone has to still do the work. It's just when you do the work, right? And you were probably...
It's when you do the work, yeah. And you learn along the way. I've learned so much, right? Be it from a real estate perspective, from a hiring perspective, from a marketing perspective. Early on, you're literally drinking from a fire hose on all these different aspects of it. And so we opened up our first one in May of 2019. Second one was just 2 months later, in really July, August of summer of 19. And so we learned a ton there, and then just that snowballs, right? And take those learnings. There's something new hits you every time, right? When you open one. And I think that's to be expected. You hope to minimize that or say, I've kind of been in this situation before, so how do I handle it now? But that was kind of our path and why we decided it was feasible.
So what, so were you one of the first franchisees then?
I was one of I was probably within the first 10 or so.
Okay. So you said you couldn't have anybody validate. I guess everybody else who bought in was still in the process of opening.
They were, exactly.
So not operating.
I did speak with some of those early owners, right? But nobody at that point had opened a studio yet.
Okay. They were just going off the same material that you were looking at, right?
That's right. Yeah. So that, that's a leap of faith, right? And at some point it's a gut check and saying, all right, we validated it, but at some point you gotta say, all right, we're ready to jump. And that's what we had to do.
Okay. And so you start with the one, you open up your second one, but I guess you both kind of started at the same time to be able to get those open that quickly. And then how long till you open the third?
So I was negotiating a lease on my third. Literally, everything was done, ready to sign it in March of 2020.
Yep.
And then we know what happened then. So I pulled back on that lease. Was able to renegotiate it, which was nice. Got a little more favorable terms over the next few months through kind of the spring and summer of 2020. Opened up that third studio in November of that year.
Okay. And how did COVID affect the open studios?
It took us a year to kind of get back to where we'd been, call it February 2020. Yep. Given what we do, we are sort of the antithesis of social distancing, right? It is hands-on. And so, that was something that we had to have all the right protocols in place from a safety perspective. But people wanted to come back, right? Everybody lived through it, right? And getting back out there, everybody has their own levels of comfort right, for what they wanted to do and when. So we had a lot of clients that were ready to come back quickly. You had to market the heck out of it and kind of start over in many ways with people. But, it took us about a year to get the studios back to where they had been. But then they've continued to grow since.
Okay. So then how many units do you have today?
So I've got 5. So I have 4 in the Charlotte market and just opened my first down in Columbia, which is about an hour and a half south of me in Columbia, South Carolina. Yeah.
And what's your goal over the next 3 years or so?
The goal is at least 10, but I'd say at least. I would, the StretchLab system has gotten pretty sold out. So in my mind, the opportunity with further growth comes with acquisition and finding some existing studios that have that maybe some owners that want to get out. So that's what I'll have my eye on. Yeah,
that's great. And your model has up to this point been all new development. I talk a lot about acquiring because like ours, it's really hard and inexpensive to open new ones because like a real estate bottleneck. But in your model, it seems that like, what is the process of opening look like? Like what's an ideal location? What's that ramp up period start to look like?
Yeah, so ideal location, I'd say Class A real estate. Given that we're a new brand, I want to be, it's worth it to me to pay slightly more for square footage and to be in the best shopping centers within the key demographic areas of the markets that I want to go. So Class A, 12 to 1,500 square feet. I'd say really 13 to 1,400 is our sweet spot. So not a big space. From there, it's an open shell. So we've got paint on the wall, flooring, put one bathroom and a sort of small office. In some cases, we do training out of some of our studios. So we've got a bigger space in the back. Timing wise, my sort of the GCs I've used can get it done in 6 to 8 weeks typically. So they can get that build. So for us, it's the second that we've got that lease signed, we need to start finding talent, right? And finding the labor so that we can start pre-sale activity.
Open in 2 months. Yeah. And then so walk through that. So the pre-sale, this is like I think pretty common in the boutique fitness model, but nobody else really does this. So like talk about the pre-sale. What does that look like? How does it work?
Yeah. So it's a great thing about our model because I can, if I execute pre-sale right, I can open with my first studio. I opened with 250 members by the time I was open. But the way that works is we'll go out. I'll go into sort of complementary businesses. It doesn't have to be boutique fitness. Sort of outdoor shops, Lululemons were always good fits for us. But we'd go in and say, hey, we want to bring a table and a couple of benches, and we're going to offer free stretches to your clients. My goal every time, and maybe we'll be here for 2 hours on a Saturday morning for that pop-up event, that pre-sale activity. And my goal going into that is I had majority of those time slots already booked with leads that I had. So people were coming into that store specifically for me, but I was also getting the eyes of people that were shopping. We give a 15-minute free stretch just so people can get a feel for what this is all about. And then they get into the sales queue. Ideally, we sell them right there. From a pre-sale perspective, we're offering discounted membership rates at that point. And that's the play. And you do that ideally 45 times a week, leading up until when you actually open the brick and mortar.
The day you open is the day then you charge all these credit cards, right, for these people who've committed to packages. Yeah. And what can you give me an idea, like what's the average? I know there's all these different levels, but ballpark, what's the average membership look like?
I mean, the average membership cost point is a little over $200. And with the majority of folks, it's four stretches a month for 50 minutes or 8 stretches a month for 25 minutes. That would say that's the bulk. We offer smaller packages and larger packages that families can share, couples can share. But our average ticket price is a little over $200.
Yeah, and so some rough math here is you've got 250 people, and you get each one of them to sign up for a $200 membership. Like that day one, you swipe the credit cards for $50,000, which is the first month of income, and then obviously you hope to continue to build that and sell merch and kind of build it. But pretty unique because then you can be technically like cash flow positive and profitable the month you open, right?
We have three of my 5 have been cash flow positive the first month we opened. Others haven't gotten quite to that point, but
which is pretty amazing because my business, we open up a new store or whatever. It's like the slow ramp up period, and like it climbs, but in the fitness model and with, this pre-sale, it's pretty unique, and it's pretty impressive too. I think it's awesome, which then gives you kind of that confidence too, to be able to open more if you pretty much know that, hey, we're not gonna have to put money into this thing as long as we do everything right.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as we know we got to go out, you got to be boots on the ground. You got to be willing to go out there and schedule those pop-ups and present yourself well so that businesses will welcome you in. That was a challenge coming out of COVID. But that third studio, we were still in the midst of COVID, so I couldn't go into nearby retailers just because they didn't have the space for you, right? But it was all outdoor, right? So you just had to pivot a little bit. It's a
so what's the range on your four or five locations now? What do they do averaging in sales, like in the best?
Our average is call it just shy of 70,000 on a monthly basis. So we range anywhere from the low 50s, getting close to 100,000 at our top performers.
And what's the average StretchLab do in the system?
The average is probably right around 50. I think I'm a little bit higher than the average across my five. Yeah.
Okay. Are there some big players in the space that own, I don't know, 30, 40, 50?
There's one big player, as I know. There's a couple of us owners that are getting into double digits. There's one big operator working out of Texas and Virginia. They're playing a little bit different game, and I think they've got a lot sort of more, I don't know if it's institutional money in play, but they went out and sort of, I think, created a fund to build
raise some money,
big portfolio.
Yeah. Okay.
All at once. The majority of folks, though, are, three pack owners, right? They go out and buy a 3-pack. Quite a few of us now, though, are looking to get sort of in the high single digits and into the teens.
Yep. So I know you quit your job. At what point did you quit your job to focus on this full time?
Yeah, so I quit my job after we had 4 studios up and running. So it hasn't been quite a year yet. And, at that point in time, it was, 4 operating studios. I know what we're doing from a revenue perspective. I know what the P&L looks like. Can we live off of this if I take away that other income? So that's a part of the decision. But then also it's, where's my time best spent, right? It kind of comes down to a lot of, it's time and money. And for me, my time is going to be better spent investing in this business and growing this, right? Personally for my family and for the team that we're working with here at StretchLab, versus sort of the corporate side. So left on good terms there, but it made sense at that point. Okay, we're going to continue to grow. Time's better spent here. There's definitely enough to keep me busy. So that helps.
Yeah, and it's all about focusing on the highest and best use of your time, which is,
that's right.
Could be building teams and training. And you could probably figure, if you got 4, you're going to figure out how to get an 8. And once you have 8, you're probably going to figure out how to get a 16. And you could quadruple your income or 10x your income if you can be fully focused on it versus, having the distraction of whatever lower value task, which could be your job. It could be, if you're running a studio because you don't have the right people, right, that's a low value compared to what, potential that you have as the owner. So how's the relationship with Exponential Fitness? So they're they can be controversial at times. They're the largest fitness brand, publicly traded company. There's a lot of data on them. Some of their brands do really well. StretchLab and Club Pilates being Bun. Some of them, struggle. And you're part of, a huge group, right? Thousands and thousands of studios, huge corporate kind of structure on the back end. I think some people thrive in that, and some people they want small, kind of hands-on. So what's your experience and perspective on it?
Yeah, I mean, our experience has been positive. I'll start with that. And when we started 5 years ago with them, it was, and the structure is still relatively the same. It's just gotten bigger, right? Each brand has its own team, right? And so the president at that time, very hands-on, his sales, his marketing, real estate, kind of all the components that Expo as a whole brings and applies to each brand, felt very personalized and specific to us, right? In understanding, while they're based in Orange County, right? Not necessarily having the knowledge about the markets I'm operating in, they brought the expertise that I could then apply to what I was seeing here at a local level. So, and that model has persisted through sort of all the brand acquisitions that they've made and just the overall growth of StretchLab in and of itself. Right now, over 300 studios open. So, but our experience has been positive. New president since we opened. There have been folks that have changed roles, but overall now, I kind of, not that I have it all figured out, right? But I know generally how to run and operate a studio. I like to work with the corporate team now on, okay, here's some ideas about how we're doing things, and they're receptive to that. And again, just looking to continue to grow our portfolio and get the support we need from them when we need it. But I don't need a ton.
Yep. Yeah. So what's your plan in terms of, all right, so you're going to go to 10, hopefully through new development agreements. You talked about maybe acquiring, which might have to be in new markets depending on, what it is. Do you ever see yourself opening another expo brand or another franchise concept within the markets you're already in, or are you going to stay all in on one thing?
Right now, we're pretty all in on StretchLab. In terms of looking at some of the other expo brands, there's a few that pique my interest. But frankly, I look at assisted stretching. We comp from across boutique. If I wanted to stay in boutique fitness, right, there's a lot more competition in any vertical that you would pick versus stretching. And at the same, so you've got the competition piece that's out there, quite saturated, definitely in my markets, right, in terms of all the number of businesses that are out there. But then I also complement all of those. So I'm boutique fitness, but if you like going to a spin studio or Pilates or a HIIT type of workout, or you're a CrossFitter, I complement all of that. So I like where we sit within the boutique fitness space. And the reason we got into this is because we really liked the idea about assisted stretching. So for right now, we're sort of all in on the brand in that modality.
Good. Yeah, and I think that's, from my experience too, like staying in the same thing and continuing to just like repeat it in different locations and different aspects is so much easier, because like there's no like new problems to solve, right? You have something that comes up, like it's already happened before, you've already figured it out, like you've got kind of one business plan, one comp plan, one thing. But sometimes people we get distracted as entrepreneurs and looking at shiny objects, but then we've got like 4 different businesses and 4 different macroeconomics and 4 different like all these things we got to worry about versus that one thing that you get really good at. And maybe it's a little boring some days, but like you rinse and repeat and you just get better and better and better at it, and that's just easier to grow. And then you become the go-to guy to sell to in the Carolinas, or maybe hey, you can buy a 3-pack in Jacksonville or wherever, and it makes sense to go and set up the district manager and then open up more and just continuing to repeat it. But it's a challenge for a lot of people. So I'm glad to hear you're staying.
Yeah, I mean, and I it's funny you say that. Like the shiny objects pop in occasionally. Like there's a open space next to one of our studios. It's been that way for a while, and we look at it like, well, what could we do here? We start looking at different brands and new concepts, and like, no, we got to stay here. This is what we're good at. This is what we know how to do. Let's stay in our lane.
There's a new book I've been talking about recently here on the podcast. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. Have you heard of it?
I have not. Is it a Cardone? Is being
no,
10X?
It's not. It's the opposite of Cardone. It's Ben Hardy and Dan Benjamin, who are Dan Benjamin's from Strategic Coach, which is like the longest standing entrepreneurial coaching program in America. And Ben Hardy's this psychologist who's written a bunch of really good books together with him, Who Not How, The Gap in the Gain, and 10X is Easier Than 2X is the newest one. But it's about what we're talking about, which is like if you want to have like exponential growth, or you want to grow, say you said, hey, I want to grow not only from 4 to 10, but I want to grow to 20 or 30. You're not going to have to be in multiple markets. And you set this like really big goal. There's only one way you're going to get there, right? And that is like if you stay focused in on it, and anything that doesn't like help you move forward, you don't do. You delegate to other people like the tasks, so you can continue to focus on the things that you are best suited to do. And so it's a really good book. Highly recommend it.
I'll check it out.
I think it's it helps you kind of identify what are those tasks. Had a lot of great stories in it, and helps kind of reaffirm all the things that you're thinking, which is like, I got to stay focused on this. And so what are some of your challenges now that you're facing, or that you've overcome in building this so far?
Yeah, I mean, our most recent challenges are we opened up our 5th studio in a new market that's not sort of in my quote unquote backyard.
Yep. So an hour and a half away, right? For
hour and a half south. Yep. And, so that's just, I don't have I'm not in my studios on a daily basis, but when I'm building out a studio, definitely early on, it was super, super hands-on, right? And seeing what's going on. And so just that distance created some challenges, some challenges in terms of the personnel, right? Made a couple of bad hires, right? That maybe I would have caught earlier on if I was sitting down with some folks on a daily basis. Still a lot of conversation over the phone and email. And so it wasn't that we were disconnected, but that personal face-to-face is definitely different, right? And so that's been the biggest challenge. I feel good about where we are now. And again, it's a new one. So the studio, I'm in development on my 6 right now, and it'll also be hour and a half south of us. So hopefully I'll take the lessons learned over the last few months and get a little bit tighter on how things open up.
Do you have like a general manager, or is that kind of you and your wife are kind of doing that role directly over the stores?
No, so our model is I now have 2 area managers. I've got one area manager that has overseen all of our studios, somebody that promoted from a general manager up through and now do an area manager role. But our general model is an area manager, and then each studio itself has its own manager. I'm toying with a few different models now where I've got an area manager and assistant managers underneath that individual. And some of that is based on proximity. I have some studios that are pretty darn close, a few miles as a crow flies. And so having sort of common ownership, leadership over 2 with assistant managers in place, seeing how that works. But generally, I'm looking for each studio, be it a manager or an assistant manager, regardless of the title. I want somebody that owns that studio, that's responsible for the scheduling, daily operations. We're there to help them with the headaches, right? But I want somebody that's ready to go and deal with, the curveballs that come on a pretty consistent basis. And then there's a level of support above them and an area manager, and then myself. So that's our general model. And now also, as we've grown, I have my first sort of internal admin role. So I've got someone who's now running marketing and doing some of our HR type of activities, because we're constantly hiring and or looking for folks. So that was eating up a lot of our time, and decided, okay, we're at the point now where it makes sense to, put somebody else in the role that's totally responsible for that.
Is hiring a challenge? I mean, this is somewhat of a specialty skill, right?
It is at times. In terms of our flexologists, we know exactly what we're looking for. And there are a lot, for us, exercise science, physiology, kinesiology degrees is what we're looking for. And there are a lot of new graduates with those degrees. So we can find those folks. I would say our biggest challenge from our model is you have to have somebody there at the front desk. Yeah, the customer answering the phone, welcoming people in, that customer service sales role. That's our biggest challenge, just because finding somebody that you can count on, trust, be reliable, be professional. And I think that's probably a common theme across a lot of retail businesses. It's the same problem we have is, that person's so critical for us. Like, we could literally change the store manager and nothing else changes. Same tech, same building, same equipment, same everything. And we could double the sales the next week. Like, it is amazing that it's all about the people. And, are they friendly on the phones? Are they welcoming? Are they saying yes? Are they are they trying to sell something, right? Like, someone comes in, are they like trying to get them to commit to the package or whatever it is? Or are they just saying, oh yeah, well, have a great day, and like letting them leave and not actually like going and asking for the sale? And so exactly. Yeah. I mean, the good news though is like your pool is big. Like, you could hire anybody who has a good personality and like show them what to do. But the challenge is, because that pool's so big, like, it's your ability to really narrow it down and find who are the people that really, will shine. So it is. Yeah. And we've learned when we find those folks. So 2 of my managers now are folks that we hired in as sort of run-of-the-mill front desk sales associates, right? When you identify decent talent, right, keep them around. If that's, for us, it's been responsibility. It's been, obviously, money's an important aspect, right, of keeping that talent, and then promotions. So we're big about promoting from within. that helps keep those good folks. So we, minimize those headaches, while at the same time, the rest of the team sees, okay, there's opportunity here for potentially me to grow if I want to do more. So I'm a big believer in that.
So that's your current challenge. I guess, what do you foresee as you move on this path from 4 to 10 or whatever it is, and you're, an hour and a half, you have at these two markets. Like, what do you foresee as the next like big challenge and rock you're going to have to move?
To me, I think it's just dealing with the scale, right? So I just made the first, it's organizing myself to be able to manage the scale. I mean, I know how to run a single brick and mortar operation, but with all the admin that comes behind it, we have a 401k, I've got health benefits, right? There's a lot of stuff there that just amplifies as you get more employees and more businesses. So I think personally for me, the challenge is going to be continuing to evolve as the business evolves. While at the same time, I'm a big believer in keep it simple, right? So let's not make what the daily operations are in a StretchLab, let's not make them any more complex than they need to be. Keep that first visit experience sort of first class. Let our teams do what they're meant to do, and my challenge is going to be to continue to be able to grow around them and continue to to build at the clip that I want to build at. Yep,
yeah, that's been a struggle for us too in growing and is building out that back office that is strong for we can onboard, we can do payroll, like I said, 401k, all that stuff. Plus we have all these bills to pay too, which adds to it.
Yeah,
we've had a ton of success hiring in the Philippines. So
yeah.
we hire full time. We have nine of them now, I think, and like we have 2 or 3 people here in the U.S. And so that's been huge for us. And then they do they can pretty much prep all the payroll. They can deal with a lot of the kind of the admin stuff that really helps. Then just the key people making the decisions on whatever it is, the health insurance or what have you.
Yeah, that's definitely on my radar. I mean, I know that you've had good. I've heard that you've had good experience there, and I know others have as well. So, for me, dealing with what I anticipate that next challenge is, I'm very open to some of these.
How does your team communicate? Like Slack or Teams or anything?
Yeah, so we're using Slack, but then also just good old text messages, right?
Yep.
We're still mom and poppy a little bit there, so that's an area that we're trying to get a little more. We're sophisticated.
We're on Slack. We have all 30 stores, and we have like different channels. With like a sales channel that guys will post like big tickets they sell. We've got like individual store channels that talk about admin issues. But yeah, it's great. I think the more engagement you can drive through that, the less people feel like they're on an island, right? Especially when you got a store an hour and a half away or whatever it is. Like they don't see each other that often. The more engagement you can put throughout the day, the better. So we found.
I agree. Like it.
And great. Any questions for me or things you know?
No, I mean, I've loved listening to kind of your content over the last few months, if not a year now, and some of the ways that the way that you have been able to grow, as I understand it, and some of sort of that seller financing is definitely something that I want to, move in that direction, right? And figure out, okay, how do I make that work within this space?
Yeah, totally possible.
Yeah.
Do they have ranking? Do you see other people's performance?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see it all.
So like you kind of know, like, so if I was you and I wanted to grow, like I'd see who the guys who are kind of regional players, they have a bunch of stores that probably aren't making money. I mean, you know what the costs are. And just dropping the seeds saying, hey, listen, if you ever think about selling, I'd love to be your first call. I've bought in like most of my stores that way. And then I'm the first one they call, and then I'm the only one they call. And, they know me, they trust me, they see I'm a good performer. They know if they, I of course, get an owner finance, and they know like I can pay them because they can see I can perform. Right. But if you're a poor performer, no one wants to carry the note because they think, well, you're not gonna be able to pay me back. Like, you're not gonna have the cash. So, I think if that's kind of on your radar, I'd start having those conversations sooner than later because, sometimes it takes a year. Well, they'll say, hey, I'm not ready now, but I'm thinking, I'm going to talk to my wife, or I'll think about it, or hey, maybe in a year or two. And sometimes they sell that, and then sometimes they call you the week later and the next week and say, yeah, I want to do it. But if you start to plant those seeds now, that they'll produce the fruits later. So,
excellent.
And the more the franchisors share, the easier it is, right? There's other franchisors that share nothing. It's like, it's really hard to know even like who do you need to talk to, but
Midas and StretchLab. And I think a lot of the big ones, they put it out there, which is motivating too. Like you want to be at the, like I'm competitive. I think you probably are too. You want to be at the top of the list. And for the ones that are at the bottom, I mean, that creates some good opportunities. It's just not the right fit for them, right? They're not following, they're not interested, not making money. You're helping them by getting them to do the next thing that would give them more joy. So
sure, that's right. I'm all about that internal, it's either internal and external competition, right? Yeah. How are we doing within our system? All of our stores are not producing the same, right? So that creates that internal competition to get up with our peers, but then across the system as well. So we definitely leverage that, and that's good insight.
That's awesome. Cool. So where could people connect with you if they're interested in chatting?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Steve Hitzemann there on there. Email is steve.heitzmann@StretchLab. So I'm not super active on Twitter, but that's kind of where folks can find me if they want to chat.
Yeah, and if everybody listening is interested in finding more about StretchLab, they can contact me as well through any of my channels. And it's one of the brands that we work with and help people get into. And like I said, great brand. I've learned a lot from you in talking, obviously prior to this too. And I really believe in the model, and I think it provides a great service, and it sounds like it's a great brand to own as well. So
it is. We love it. And my goal is to get 2 stretches a week, and can keep, because it is a fantastic product in and of itself, especially as Father Time starts to take hold. But from a business perspective, we love it. So it's been a fun ride. Continue down that path.
Cool. Thanks again for coming on and sharing your story.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you having me.
That's all we got for this episode with the Business with Beers podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is to rate the show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on your preferred social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find all my links at brianbeers.com. Please just share the podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. And until next time, remember to take the actions others won't, to live the life that others don't.